It's almost 1 year since the collapse of the Afghan Republic and the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. A lot of development has happened since then in the country, and that has been a concern to the neighboring countries and to the wider world as well. With me is the Afghan envoy to Tajikistan. So, welcome to WION, and also the advisor to the Afghan envoy. My first question to you is, Ambassador Sir, how do you see this last 1 year in terms of the situation in Afghanistan?
در قدم اول سلام به شما و به تمام بینندگان شما. تشکر میکنم از شما که قضایای جهانی و به خصوص افغانستان را تعقیب میکنیم.
At first, I would like to say hello to you and to everyone watching. And I want to thank WION News for following up on everything that has been going on in Afghanistan.
افغانستان واقعا یک سال قبل در اختیار تروریست‌های بین‌المللی قرار گرفت.
In the past year, Afghanistan has fallen in the hands of international terrorists.
و هیچ کسی نمیتونه که از این انکار بکنه و طالبان را به عنوان یک گروه سیاسی عنوان بکنن.
No one can hide this away, and no one can recognize the Taliban as a political group.
شاید یک تعداد کشورها به خاطر منافع سیاسی و اقتصادی خود با طالب‌ها مراودات متفاوت داشته باشند، ولی طالب‌ها گروه تروریستی هستند.
Probably some countries, in regards to their national interests and their economical interests, have some sort of relationships with the Taliban.
یک سال قبل کابل در اختیار و سایر ولایت‌های افغانستان در اختیار طالبان قرار گرفت.
But the Taliban are terrorists, and about a year ago, certain provinces of Afghanistan started collapsing to the hands of the Taliban.
هزاران انسان، هزاران دانشمند، هزاران محصل، هزاران نویسنده، هزاران ژورنالیست افغانستان ترک کردن و بیرون از افغانستان شدن.
Thousands of regular civilians, human rights activists, authors, journalists started leaving the country.
و طالبان در طول یک سال هر آن جنایتی که از دستشان آمد به شکل زنجیره‌ای در این قسمت انجام دادند.
And throughout the past year, the Taliban have committed unprecedented amount of crimes in Afghanistan.
امروز افغانستان به خصوص شهرهای بزرگ افغانستان به یک زندان خانگی برای مردم افغانستان تبدیل شده.
Today, Afghanistan has turned into a jail for everyone living there.
هیچ آدم درس خواندگی و مکتب خواندگی که با تکنیک، تکنولوژی و مسلک آشنایی داشته باشه در بین طالب‌ها وجود نداره.
There are no sort of experts in any field that are amongst the Taliban.
هر آن چیزی که امروز در افغانستان حضور داره ملا هست و مولوی هست که اونا از دینم تفسیر خود را دارن.
The only thing that exists in between the Taliban are imams that have a specific belief and understanding of religion to themselves.
من با جرأت گفته میتونم که امروز افغانستان به یک مرکز تروریست‌های بین‌المللی تبدیل شده.
I can say this with confidence that today Afghanistan has turned into a safe hub for international terrorism.
و این خطر تنها برای افغانستان نه بلکه این منطقه و جهان را تهدید می‌کند.
This is not only a threat for Afghanistan, but it is a threat for the region and for the international community.
So recently we saw a report, an American report, which is the SIGAR report, which is the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan's reconstruction. That's the report which has talked about President Ashraf Ghani and said that he hasn't left the country with any kind of money as it was being said in the past. Any comments on this report, almost more than 30-page report?
در طول 20 سال سیگار زحمات زیاد و اطلاعات زیادی را جمع آوری کرده.
For the past 20 years, SIGAR has worked very actively and has gathered a lot of reports.
من به اطلاعات سیگار احترام میگذارم.
I respect the reports that they have.
ولی من ایست کسی که تقریباً عمر خود را حدود تقریباً 40 سال در نهادهای امنیتی، استخباراتی، کشفی و پلیس افغانستان سپری کردیم.
And as a person who has spent over 40 years of his life serving a country in different sectors, from the intelligence agencies to the military and everything else.
آن چیزی را که ما مشاهده کردیم و اطلاعاتی که در اختیار داریم و دوستای ما که اطلاعات در اختیار داده خدمت شما میخوایم ارائه کنم.
From the reports that we have, that our friends have and colleagues have gathered, that's something that we want to share with you.
سیگار با ما در تماس روزهای اول بود.
SIGAR did get in contact with us during the first few days.
ولی کدام مصاحبه خاصی حسما تقاضا نکرده.
They did not request any sort of interview from me.
و اگر چیزی هم از من تقاضا کردم مستندسازی خواسته که تقاضا بکنه که من مستندسازی بکنم.
And if anything, they wanted to document everything from me.
من مامور سیگار نبودم.
I am not an employee for SIGAR.
ما اطلاعاتی را که از داخل افغانستان گرفتیم کسایی که بر من اطلاعات موثقه دادن اونام وطن پرستایی بودن وطن خود دوست داشتن که اطلاعات بر ما گفتن.
The reports that we had at hand are from patriots from inside the country, and because of that, they have shared those reports with us.
یک ماه قبل تمام عواید نمایندگی‌های سیاسی افغانستان را به امر دکتر اشرف غنی جمع‌آوری شد به کابل انتقال داده شد.
About a month prior to the fall, based on an order given from Ghani himself, all of the income from all of Afghanistan's diplomatic missions were sent over to Kabul.
اسنادی که بانک مرکزی افغانستان نشان میده که حتی بالاتر از 400 میلیون دلار وجود نداره ولی اسنادش موجود است.
The statements that the bank showed in Afghanistan that they had over $400 million present, which was completely inaccurate. That amount was not available.
و در حین زمان در طول 2 هفته پیش از سقوط چندین بار طیاره ناشناس در میدان هوایی کابل نشست کرد معلوم نبود که چی انتقال میداد.
And days prior to the fall of Kabul, unregistered planes would start landing in Kabul and start taking things out.
افسرایی که از میدان هوایی با ما تماس بودن که از گذشته ها با ما شناخت داشتن اونا میگفتن که بکسه های سربسته هست معلوم نیست از طریق VIP توسط افراد دکتر اشرف غنی و مسئولین هر انتقال داده میشه.
And the personnel that worked at the airport that were in contact with us, they would report back and say that through the VIP area of the airport, closed bags would be taken in, and it would be by Ghani's personnel and personnel from the presidential palace.
ما سیگار تشکر میکنم که اقلا 1 میلیون را تثبیت کردن که اشرف غنی از افغانستان کشیده.
I want to thank SIGAR for even proving that Ghani did take $1 million from Afghanistan.
قوانین جرمی افغانستان 1 روپیه هم جرم میگه 1 میلیارد هم جرم میگه.
The Constitution of Afghanistan states that stealing one Afghani is a crime, and stealing a million Afghanis is also a crime.
و قانون جرم تذکر میده هر شخصی که نیروهای مسلح افغانستان را به دشمن تسلیم میکنه یا حرازی افغانستان را به دشمن تسلیم میکنه یا اقتصاد و امکانات مادی افغانستان را به دشمن تسلیم میکنه او خائن ملی هست.
And the Constitution of Afghanistan also states that any person in charge handing over the geography of the country, the military of the country, the economical state of the country to the enemy is also a national criminal.
It's almost 1 year since the collapse. So if you have any recollection or since you have seen things happening up close and personally, if you can give some anecdotes, what transpired on 15th of August and 16th of August?
هستن کس باور نمیکرد که سقوط بسیار به این سادگی صورت بگیره.
No one would have believed that the fall of Afghanistan would have been this easy.
به خاطر اینکه اون صداها و اون فریادی را که اشرف غنی و ملت میکشید و اطمینان میداد که من شاه حسبق افغانستان نیستم یا کشته میشم یا مقاومت میکنم.
People did not anticipate anything. Ghani stated himself that I am not the former king of Afghanistan. I will stay in the country and I will die within the country.
در بین جنرالان و رهبری ایالات متحده آمریکا نظریات متفاوتی وجود داشت.
Within the US generals and the American leadership, there was different sorts of ideas in regards to Afghanistan.
شده میتونه او رو شما حتما از طریق مطبوعات همیشه میخوانین و میشنوین.
That's something as the media that you guys always follow up on and check up.
ولی من از کسی که در رشته نظامی تحصیل کردیم و در این راستا تجربه دارم این سقوط به اساس یک توطئه صورت گرفت.
And as a person who's an expert in the military field who has military education, this fall is something that was planned.
در مقامت اول قهرمان ملی افغانستان و شهید پروفسور استاد برهان الدین ربانی که رهبری مقاومت دوم و دوش داشتن، ما به اندازه بسیار ضعیف ساز و برگ نظامی داشتیم و امکانات نظامی داشتیم.
During the first resistance run by our national hero Ahmad Shah Massoud and the martyred Professor Burhanuddin Rabbani, we had very little equipment in regards to standing against the enemy.
طالبا با تمام حامیانشان، با تمام قوتشان نتانستن که از ما تقریبا 11 ولایت افغانستان و خصوص ولایات شمالی را از دست ما، از تصرف ما بکشن.
The Taliban and all of their supporters were not able to take over 11 provinces of Afghanistan that we had at our disposal and under our control.
در حالی که ما تیارات جنگی، سلاح ثقیله بسیار منظم، سلاح خفیفه و امکانات و تسلیحات نظامی بسیار اندک داشتیم.
Even though we had very little access to heavy artillery and helicopters and any other things.
و حتی طالبان تانستن که شمال هم چند ولایت را بگیرن، ولی چنان ضربه سنگین دیدن که فکر میکنم پورا تاریخ فراموش نمیکنه.
And even when they did try to take over the northern provinces, they faced heavy casualties and defeat that I don't think history will forget that.
ما در اون ایام مسئولیت امنیت نظامی قوای مسلح افغانستان را به دوش داشت.
At that time, Mr. Ambassador was the head of the intelligence of the military of Afghanistan.
ما هزاران جنگجوی خارجی را به اسارت گرفته بودیم.
We had hostages of thousands of former fighters, foreign fighters.
ولی حال چطور شده میتونه که با موجودیت صدها هزار نیروهای نظامی مجهز، طالبها بسیار به سادگی بیایم کابل و افغانستان را بگیرن؟
How is it possible now that with an army force of hundreds of thousands of troops, the Taliban can come and easily take over the country?
هرچند اسماعیل خان در هرات مقاومت بیشتر کردن،
Even though Ismail Khan resisted in Herat against the Taliban.
ولی در یک توطئه در اسارت داخل شد.
And in a conspired plan, they gave him in.
در امو زمان رهبرای جهادی و سیاسی را در یک توطئه با یک مذاکره خارج از افغانستان روان کردند.
At that time, the Mujahideen leaders and the leaders, political leaders as well, were sent out of Afghanistan for the peace talks.
در طول 20 سالم ما آمادگی صلح را داشتیم. نیروهای ناتو در افغانستان بود و ما قرارداد بین المللی با ایالات متحده آمریکا داشتیم در راستای حفظ افغانستان و منافع 20 ساله مردم افغانستان و جامعه بین المللی.
And in the past 20 years, we were open for peace. We had NATO present in Afghanistan, and we had an accord with the US to prevent any sort of falling of Afghanistan once again.
بخصوص درای زیبای پنجشیر که یک دژهای آهنین دوره مقاومت اول و دوره جهاد بود، کاملا خل سلا شده بود و به صلح تن داده بودند.
And even the beautiful valley of Panjshir, which was the backbone of the first resistance, had turned into a tourist area.
ما تمام سلاح‌ها را تحویل کرده بودیم که ما به طرف صلح حرکت می‌کنیم.
We had given up all of our weapons and we said that we will push towards peace.
ولی با تأسف که همه جا در یک توطئه سقوط کرد و تنها پنجشیر ماند.
But unfortunately, everywhere was handed over to every province was handed over to the Taliban in a deal, and the only province that was left was Panjshir.
یگانه ولایتی که بیرق طالب را بلند نکرده و تسلیم نشده پنجشیر است.
The only province that has not raised up the Taliban flag and has not surrendered yet is Panjshir.
فعلا مقاومت جریان دارد.
The resistance is still going on.
این مقاومت گسترش پیدا کرده.
This resistance will expand.
این مقاومت تنها در عرصه نظامی نه بلکه در عرصه فرهنگی، در عرصه سیاسی، در عرصه‌های مختلف جریان دارد.
This resistance will expand not only militarily but also in regards to this resistance will expand politically by activism as well and in any other sort of area.
مقاومت ما تنها برای پنجشیر نیست بلکه برای تمام افغانستان است.
This resistance is not only for Panjshir, this resistance for Afghanistan as a whole.
حتی به بشریت است.
And this is for humanity.
شما گرفتاری حل ظواهری را یا کشته شدن حل ظواهری را عملاً مشاهده کردین در کابل.
You have probably witnessed the killing of al-Zawahiri in Kabul as well.
کابل با یک مرکز و به یک مرکز و پایگاه تروریست‌ها تبدیل شدن.
Kabul has turned into a hotspot as a safe haven of international terrorists.
این تروریست‌ها لشکرهای متفاوت است.
These terrorists are from different groups.
به منطقه خطر است، به همسایه‌ها خطر است و به دنیا خطر است.
They are a threat for our neighbors, they are a threat for the region, and they are a threat for the international community.
ما مقاومت میکنیم با کمک دنیا، به کمک دنیا.
We will continue on fighting and resist with or without the help of the international community.
So you talked about resistance. We saw a very strong resistance when first time Taliban came in 1990s. This time, while you mentioned about resistance, it still looks a weak resistance, firstly, and it looks a resistance which does not have an international support.
شما حق دارین که مسئله را مطرح بکنین و مقاومت فعلی را ضعیف ارزیابی بکنین.
You have every sort of right to claim that this resistance is somewhat more weaker.
به خاطر از اینکه شما در صحنه نیستین.
Because you are not present in the field.
ما در مقاومت اول حضور داشتم.
We were available at the first resistance, present.
یک دوره مسئولیت تعلیم و تربیت مجاهدین به دوش داشتم.
At a time we were in charge of training and educating the mujahideen.
دوره دیگهش بخش حمیتی یا اینتلیجنس نظامی ها را به دوش داشت.
And at the second, after that, we were ambassador was in charge of the intelligence of the resistance.
واقعا مقاومت با این مقاومت تفاوت داره.
It's truly a fact that the first resistance is much more different than what it is now.
در اون مقاومت همه مجاهدین ما جوان بود.
At the first resistance, all of our mujahideen were very young.
قهرمان ملی را کس شهید نساخته بود.
The national hero of Afghanistan was not martyred.
استاد برهان الدین ربانی مشروعیت بین المللی داشت.
Professor Burhanuddin Rabbani had international legitimacy.
ما حق چاپ پول داشتیم.
We had the right to print money.
ما در ملل متحد به رسمیت شناخته شده بودیم.
We were recognized as a legitimate state in the United Nations.
و تمام نیروهای جهادی در هر ولایتی که بودن استادگی داشتن.
And every soldier member that we had in provinces, they were standing and resisting.
واقعا امروز یک جنگ تحمیلی بالای شانه مردم افغانستان دوباره تحمیل شده.
Today another war has been put on the shoulders of the people of Afghanistan.
ولی افکار مردم فعلا بسیار بالا هست.
But the ideology of the people is much more different today.
و امروز اکثریت جوانای تحصیل کرده در جبهات ما هست.
And today a large majority of the young generation that is currently resisting are educated members.
مردم با انگیزه هست.
They are people with high morals.
یک سال برای یک مقاومتی که به حقب طالب ها و گروپ های متفاوت تروریستی و حامیانشان حضور داره وقت کم است.
And 1 year is a very short amount of time for resistance, even though the Taliban have so much support behind their back.
در تمام کشورهای مختلف دنیا افغانها تظاهرات میکنن به ضد طالب ها.
In different various parts of the world, Afghans are protesting against the Taliban.
دوره اول یک تعداد هست حامیان طالب ها که حمایت میکردن بسیار به سادگی طالب به رسمیت شناختن و فعلا هیچ کشوری به رسمیت نشناخته شد.
In the past, some countries recognized them very quickly, the Taliban as a legitimate state. Right now, no one has given them legitimacy.
و امروز در شهر کابل و سایر ولایت‌های افغانستان وحشت طالب‌ها را مردم از نزدیک مشاهده می‌کنند.
And today in Kabul and in various parts of the country, the people are witnessing the violence that the Taliban have been causing.
طالب هیچ نوع تغییری در وجودش نامده و هنوزم به دست بیگانه هاست.
And today there's no change amongst the Taliban and they are still in the hands of foreigners.
اگر مقاومت قوت نداشته باشد چند روز قبل چطور هلیکوپترشان سقوط کرد و همیال حصیره‌اش در اختیار ما است.
If the resistance had no sort of power, why was their chopper taken down a few weeks ago and their hostages are still with us?
و یک تفاوت دیگه هم در بین طالب‌ها به وجود آمده.
And a change has come amongst the Taliban as well.
اساکرشان ترک میکنن.
Their soldiers are leaving.
جهاد از یارا میگه جهاد نیست قدرت طلبی است.
The claim that they have made that this is jihad, that this is for self-interest.
اینا که دروازه‌های مکاتب بسته کرده اکثریت جوانا بر مخالفت با اینا خیستن.
Once they close the doors for education, a lot of the young generation has stood up against them.
مردم میخواهد تحصیل بکنن، مردم میخواهد روابط بین المللی داشته باشن، مردم میخواهد که دختر مکتب بخونه، مردم میخواهد که ما به طرف پیشرفت و ترقی و با جامعه بین المللی یکسان بریم، ولی با تاسف که این طالب ها نمیخواین.
The people want education. The people want to have relationship with the international community. The people want stability. But unfortunately, the Taliban have been the cause of holding everything back.
و مردم افغانستان به هیچ صورت نمیخواد که افغانستان مستمر یک کشور باشه.
Sure.
در اختیار یک کشور باشه.
And the people of Afghanistan do not want Afghanistan to be under the control and hands of any other country.
So my question to you is also that recently the former or perhaps current, the Afghan president Ghani said he's still technically the president of Afghanistan. In the back of this, I want to ask you, who do you think is responsible for the collapse? You talked about the deal, but if you can shed some light as to who do you see as responsible and the comments by President Ghani.
بگو شما شطرنج حتما بازی کردین.
You've probably played chess before.
وقتی که شاه سقوط میکنه دیگه لشکری ها کلش از بین میره.
When the king is checkmated, everyone else loses.
اشرف غنی بسیار ادعا میکرد که من استادگی میکنم.
Ghani always claimed that I will stand up and resist.
از لشکر کرده اشرف غنی تیزتر فرار کرد.
From the faster than the people, Ghani ran away first himself.
در این سقوط هر کس به اندازه خود مسئولیت داره.
In this collapse, everyone is responsible in their own to their own extent.
دکتر اشرف غنی سر قماندان حالای قوای مسلح خودم میگرفت.
Ghani was the commander-in-chief of the army.
تمام نهادهای امنیتی را خودش افرادش جابجا کرده بود.
All of the security sectors of the country were run by his people.
اگر اشرف غنی میگه که خلیلزاد مداخله کرد یا اشخاص افراد دیگه مانع کارش شد، چرا این مسئله را با شورای ملی افغانستان با مردم افغانستان شریک نساخت؟
If he is blaming Khalilzad for everything, why did he not share this with the National Council of Afghanistan and with the people of Afghanistan?
خلیلزاد با اشرف غنی قصه های زیادی دوره محصولی دارن.
Khalilzad and Ghani have a lot of stories to share during their time as students.
نباید قصه های شخصی خود در سرنوشت یک ملت خاتمه بدن.
They should not combine their stories as students to the future of a country.
امروز حالتی که در افغانستان حکم فرماست، مسئولیت اصلیش به دوش دکتر اشرف غنی است.
Today, the situation that is going on in Afghanistan, the responsibility is all on the hands of Ghani himself.
ای که اشرف غنی دوباره میخواد به کابل بره یا نره، فکر میکنم فعلا دفن تاریخ شده.
Whether Ghani wants to go to Kabul or not anymore, he is buried down in history now.
شاید یک تعداد از جوانا هنوزم با شعور یک تعداد جوانا به اساس روابط قومی و زبانی بازی کرده بتونه.
Probably he can play around with the emotions of the young generation due to ethnics and language.
دکتر اشرف غنی به خاطر ماندنش در اقتدار هزارا نظامی، جنرال و عسکر کشته شده، شهید شده.
Because of him staying and because of Ghani wanting to stay in power, because of him and his actions, thousands of troops are martyred today.
اگر از طرف طالبان کسایی کشته شده، همگیش افغانا بودن.
If the Taliban have lost soldiers as well, they were all Afghans.
همش به قماندی دکتر اشرف غنی کشته شده.
All of them were killed by the command orders that Ghani had made.
اگر من وضع اشرف غنی باشم، هیچ صدای خود در مطبوعات نمیکشیدم.
If I was instead of Ghani, I would not speak to the media at all.
هنوزم اشرف غنی با کلمات میخواد بازی و مردم را فریب بده.
Ghani still wants to play around with words and trick the people.
ما توقع ما است که مردم افغانستان صدا بکشه، اشرف غنی و همسال اشرف غنی را باید محکمه بکنن.
I expect the people of Afghanistan to raise their voices against Ghani and people around him, for them to be pulled to court.
Thank you so much, sir, for speaking extensively on a number of issues about, of course, what has happened in Afghanistan and, of course, the resistance in Afghanistan right now. And, well, we will be in touch, and thanks for speaking to WION.
تشکر میکنم از شما میگم.
Thank you very much to you as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.